Joe, a very good interview was conducted today, I thought, with Carson Beck, the new Miami quarterback.
It was yesterday, but
what did I say today? Yesterday with Carson Beck. He was also on college football as well, or college football on XM as well, talking about the rehab that I want to throw in here. Joe, Carson Beck talked about mainly two things at ACC Media Days. Number one, he talked about his rehab, but number two, talking about getting those turnovers down that plagued him at Georgia a year ago. Now that Miami has a new signal caller, now that Cam Ward has moved on to the Tennessee Titans, your thoughts about Carson Beck, and now we're getting what seems to be a healthy Carson Beck going into the season for the University of Miami?
I'm on the same page with you here that I was really impressed by Carson Beck's comments. I think that this could easily just be looked at as like a total dud. It means nothing. He's just saying what he needs to say. I thought that this displayed a lot of ownership for Carson Beck and what his problems were last year. The exact quote that he gave yesterday: last year, there were just times where I just tried to press too much. I tried to be Superman and save the day. That's not what we need. I just need to be myself. That was a talking point that I had on this show, that many other analysts had on their shows and their platforms, that it felt like Carson Beck was not playing like the version of himself that we saw in 2023. They were throwing the ball too much. He was looking for the home run. It felt like he was reading into the hype that was surrounding him, that he was going to be a top 10 pick, that he was going to be a Heisman Trophy winner, that we all talked about in the preseason. And because he fell into it, he felt like he had to be this superhero that he didn't need to be. He just needed to be on time and to keep the offense rolling, and everything else was going to work itself out. I love that he is aware enough in understanding what led to his mistakes. I think that there are a lot of guys in the history of the sport, especially quarterbacks, that I'm not trying to infer will assess blame elsewhere, but aren't able to realize what went wrong. He is spot on what held him back. And for a guy that a lot of people spent the whole offseason criticizing his maturity, criticizing his focus, all of those things about Carson Beck, I thought that this was a very mature.
Doesn't like watching football.
Right. I thought this was so on point, and I really like this answer from Beck. And I think that it's telling that we should expect that this year is going to be a lot better.
Joe, can I throw something out very odd to you, and you tell me? I know that you covered the draft, so I want to bring this up to you. Think of some of the top quarterbacks in college football a season ago. I'm just going to throw out some random ones. I'm not saying they're all the top, but think about this for just a moment. Carson Beck, Quinn Ewers, Garrett Nussmeier, Drew Allar. What do all of them have in common? What all of them have in common is they had a massive interception rate based off of what we've seen them play from the year before. Let me give an example. Carson Beck as a junior was a 72% completion percentage guy. He only had 6 turnovers as a junior, and they found one game short of getting into the playoff. They lost to Alabama in the SEC championship game. Joe, he went down to 64%. He doubled his interceptions that last year from the year prior to 12. And I thought that there was a lot of interesting things around college football a season ago. Joe, every top quarterback that we talked about, Cam Ward had more interceptions too, just throwing that out there. Everybody had more picks. I don't know what to make of that. It's still rolling around in my brain as to why all these quarterbacks had struggles a year ago. Could it have been the head comms in the helmets? I thought that was a little interesting because it was the only real massive things that changed. You're hearing the coach saying, hey, there's cover 2. No, wait, it's cover 3. All these kinds of crazy stuff. Joe, I look at a guy like Carson Beck and say, you could easily get his junior year performance again. Or I guess technically redshirted sophomore performance again. I thought that he was so much better that year than he was the season prior. Now, I thought he did play on time a little bit more, but I think that there's something that he's going to get at Miami this year that he didn't get at Georgia a season ago, a consistent run game. He's not having to go up against the same level of talent every single week. Now, Georgia had the number 1 strength of schedule in the country last year. Nobody can dispute how many games that they played against top-tier opponents. Joe, they played 4 playoff teams. 4. They played all of the teams in the SEC that made it. They played Clemson in the beginning of the season. What's interesting about what we saw from Carson Beck was I thought some things around him fell around him. I'm not saying that he was taking a shot at Georgia because he put it on himself. But, Joe, remember the SEC championship game? Remember what happened when Dylan Bell, the bomb that he threw to Dylan Bell and he drops it? Remember all the games like Florida in the beginning of it where he has 3 interceptions, but the 3 drives before that, he's got 3 critical drops on 3rd down. I don't know what to make of Carson Beck at the current moment because the guy that I saw as a redshirted sophomore, I felt like was just, oh, my God, this is too much. We can't run the football. Guys aren't getting open. There's drops everywhere. I got to force this ball for us to get a first down. I can't keep putting this on our defense. I got to be real with you. I think his comments are spot on. I think that what I heard today was a young man who self-reflected better than I have heard any other quarterback. I've heard Garrett a lot, and I think he's done a really good job. I actually heard Drew Allard. I think he's done the same thing. I think you hit the nail on the head, man. All the shit that we were talking about him with the Cavender girl and all his car getting stolen and all that stuff, I think you were right, man. I think you're seeing it someone who's a little bit more locked in. But the only thing I'd say, here was the comment that he ended this press conference with. I went back and looked at I went back and watched all my mistakes from a season ago. And I kept thinking to myself, why did I make that silly throw? Remember the guy who said, I don't like watching film? Well, it seems like he's doing it now.
Yeah, I think that comment that he had last year was taken aggressively out of context. And I think that naturally happens. There's been plenty of guys that have talked about this or not talked about this, but have had quotes similar to this. And every outlet always takes it and runs with it. So you're right. I'm sure that he was taking the reflection very seriously. And I think the way that he talked about it made me feel pretty good about it without him having to outwardly try to defend himself. I don't mean to make Florida State a punching bag, but here we are. Notice the difference. And I'm purely using this as an example of showing how great of a young man Carson Beck is. Tommy Castellanos did not have any self-reflection after he got benched at Boston College and went out of his way to talk about how he dominated the ACC when he didn't. He was mediocre. He did not dominate. He was a good runner. That's a nice big plays, but he was not a good quarterback to the point where Bill O'Brien benched him. And he is talking up that they're going to win in week 1. Carson Beck is acknowledging that he made a ton of mistakes and he has to be better. That he has to get better. That is the difference to me, and why I think that this means more than anyone wants to recognize. I think that this headline in Miami circles got talked up quite a bit. Maybe in ACC circles got mentioned by some people. But I think that this deserves a lot more love for him being aware enough to realize that what was holding him back.
Can I ask you a question that's going to be – oh, man, we and our Georgia people are going to get mad at this.
Uh-oh.
How much was this on him or was on Georgia too?
I had said this before that I thought 50% of this was on Bobo. I don't think it was on Georgia.
Well,
I thought that it was on Bobo.
The drops aren't on Bobo.
The drops are on his receivers, obviously, but what's on Bobo is they're throwing the ball. Like I've rewatched the Alabama-Georgia game like 5 times because I've watched different prospects participate in that game. And I've kind of like
a few posters from that game.
Well, because there's a lot of amazing plays from that game.
Right.
But the one thing that like I remember, that was one of the worst games where like first and second down, they're throwing the ball in like the first, second quarter. And it's like, just try to run the ball. Just try. You're going up against an Alabama defensive line that's one of the weaker ones that you faced.
Yeah.
Just try to run the ball. When you try to throw the ball way too much, I can literally spotlight multiple games where offensive coordinators cooked themselves by trying to throw the ball too much. LSU versus Alabama, we talked about it. They tried to throw the ball too much early and it killed them. Ole Miss versus Kentucky tried to throw the ball too much early, and Georgia did it the whole year. So I think that there is definitely some ownership on Georgia not being a good setting for him, and credit to Carson Beck for not even mentioning Georgia. That's Joe, the whole point here.
I'll throw another one out there to you. some of these situations with quarterbacks that had higher interceptions. We talked about Garrett, that being one. We've talked about Sark and Ewers, that being another. Drew Allar's picks, and we'll talk about him in just a moment. They're up. The Notre Dame game, like, vastly comes to my mind here, and maybe Penn State and USC from a year ago where he threw 3 picks. But it comes to my mind in the sense of, man, the best thing that you can do for a young quarterback is run the ball. At least give the attempt to, or give him a swing pass, do something. But I do think some of this was on Georgia. Joe, before we move on from Carson Beck here, he said on XM radio as well that he's been 100% for a couple months now. He said those 4 months taught me more than anything I've ever been through in my entire life. He said the 4 months, it was really just a lot of rotation and getting the rehab under control before I could start throwing. Carson Beck also states in this comment that it was easily the toughest. Oh, I'm rereading that. Easiest, toughest part of my life, but it also might have been the calmest. I thought that was interesting because what happened in those 4 months? All the off-field bullshit, all the stuff that he felt like he didn't want to deal with. Now, I don't know if I'm completely buying in. I still want to see him throw the football around a little bit. That surgery is not an easy one to come back from. Joe, the number one thing for baseball guys that does not return is accuracy. It's the number one thing that is off. Let's see what happens here. But, man, it is a little refreshing to hear some of these things he's saying.
Yeah, again, overall, I just think that the tone of his comments are exactly what they need to be in order for Miami to hit the ground running, in order for Carson Beck to get back to his form, for everything to work out this season, and for Miami to reach the college football playoff. So I'm very proud of him. I think that this has been a really good bit of reflection.